Hi all. This slightly long video is going to cover a very useful tool for harmonic dictation or arpeggiation practice, the DIY progression builder. This tool lets you write your own progressions, then either send them to the progression generator for dictation practice or the progression grid for arpeggiation and improvisation practice. We can open this tool using the Other Tools pop-up menu in the toolbar. I then need to open either the progression generator or progression grid so that I have somewhere to send my progressions. Since I already know the progression I'm playing, I'll turn the hider off in the generator. That said, I might still want to keep the hider on if I'm working on something like tracking the soprano of a progression that I've chosen. Okay, I'm ready to write. There are two different ways to enter a progression. The first and fastest method is to type the Roman numerals into the text box. Just hit the return key when you're done, and the progression will be sent to the practice app. In the progression generator, your progression will immediately play back. We can switch over to the progression grid and hit the resend button to load the same progression into the grid. Note that if you want to change the mode between major and minor, you can do that in the DIY builder without moving over to the progression generator. You'll need to switch modes to enter a minor progression, as the generator interprets the Roman numerals based on the current mode. You don't need a slash in your inversion symbols, but you do need one for a secondary dominant. For diminished or half-diminished chords, you can use a lowercase o for diminished or a 0 for half-diminished if you aren't sure how to type the actual symbols. The second method is to use the Roman numeral pull-down menu to choose your chords. There are a lot here, so you may have to scroll to find your chords. Note that although these all load into the progression grid, the progression generator has a smaller chord vocabulary, so less common inversions or things like secondary leading tone chords may not be recognized by the generator. We're planning to expand the support in the future. If you're using the DIY tool to compare similar progressions in the progression generator, it's helpful to hear the different versions using similar chord voicings. The progression generator uses 3 different basic chord voicings, low, medium, and high, and you can lock in one of these using the voicing menu. Now I can switch between, say, 1-4-5-1 and 1-2-6-5-1, and the only change will be in the second chord. There's a useful feature in the progression generator that's especially nice with the DIY builder. You can manually step through a progression one chord at a time. You can do this with the buttons below the score view, but it's probably easiest to use the arrow keys on your keyboard. The left and right arrows step to the previous or next chord in the progression, and the down arrow will repeat the currently selected chord. You can use this both with arpeggiation practice and to home in on a single chord when comparing similar progressions. Note that you can also transfer the same progression back and forth between the progression grid and generator. If I've loaded a progression into the generator, I can switch to the grid and click the Load from ProgGen button to work with the solfege map of this progression. Or I can create a progression in the grid then switch to the generator and click the Load from Prog Grid button to hear that progression with better voice leading. That should be enough to get you going with the DIY progression tool. There's an additional package of features that allow you to save your own progressions, edit them, and randomly select one of them for practice in the progression generator, but we won't get into that here. For now, thanks for watching, and happy practicing.